Hi, my name is Dr. Leilani Carver, and I'm so happy to be with you all today. Welcome to my session. We're going to be talking today about, of course, you've been talking about unmasking your leadership potential, but we are actually going to be talking specifically today about persuasion. I am a professor at Maryville University, and we're going to be talking about how to increase your virtual persuasion. So we'll move on to our next slide. And we're going to talk about effective tactics for Zoom and beyond. So all of you have been going to school actually on Zoom, I imagine, or something like that, and experiencing this. So we're going to be talking about that and how to persuade people on Zoom. So let's go ahead and look at our agenda for today. We're going to go ahead and move on. So I wanted to give you a little background about myself. I am a communication and leadership consultant, and I actually do public relation. I've been published on public relations news, on The Hill, on Forbes, on Huffington Post, on a couple of other major news sites. And I talk a lot about consulting. I also talk a lot about persuasion and women's leadership. And I really enjoy talking about persuasion. I teach a graduate persuasion class, and we're going to move right into persuasion now and talking about how we can persuade others to be more effective on Zoom and beyond. So I have this is my education. We can skip that and continue on. But I want you throughout today to start using the chat. I want you to use the chat. If everybody could just say hi on the chat, I'd love to know who's in the session today. Tell me your name, what school you're from. And I'd also like you to ask questions as we go through. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and get to know more about you. So great. Oh, I'm seeing some names coming through. Oh, Casey, I have a student in one of my classes, in one of my leadership classes here. Casey, great to see you. Great to see some of you else. Oh, from other places as well. Good to see you. Thank you. I want you to use the chat today. If you have any kind of questions as we go along, please use it. So we're moving right into persuasion. So one of the things that makes Zoom so difficult, or any kind of what we would call a virtual chat or virtual conferencing system, is this idea of a constant gaze, that we actually have to constantly look at each other through this. It's very much a nonverbal stressor. When we are just talking day to day, we don't have to continually gaze either at ourselves or at each other. We take breaks. We look off, maybe at the ceiling or around. It's a natural phenomenon. Actually, we look at each other about 60% of the time. When we're speaking, about 90% of the time, but we don't do 100%. When we're on virtual conferencing, we actually have to look about 100% of the time, which is very, very stressful. And so it can be a really constant thing. The guy who came up with the constant gaze idea, his name is Dr. Ballinson. He is at Stanford University. He's the founding director of the Virtual Human Interaction. And he came up with this idea because it's very stressful. So what we want to do today is talk about how we can monitor that constant gaze and become more effective on Zoom, but also look at a lot of other things. So we're going to talk about your Zoom background setup, video settings, how to pick your best picture for digital sites, things like LinkedIn, but also applies to things like dating sites. I'm going to talk about presentation tips for you, strategies that you can use in leadership for persuasion to get people to participate in your organization, especially when we have to do a lot of events virtually, which I know is a great challenge. We're going to talk about how to apply persuasive strategies in your organizations and preventing Zoom fatigue, and of course, any questions that you have along the way. So moving on. With your video conferencing setup, you want to make sure that your camera is at the correct height, that it's really straight on. So wherever your your video camera, your webcam is, you want to make sure it's right at the correct height. One of the things that you see a lot of people do is that most of the cameras are really too low. So you get a lot of these, what I call nostril shots, which are not very pleasant. Or you can get some of these as well, which are forehead down, or it'll just be wonky. What you want to do is really make sure that you're hitting it the correct level. A lot of times that requires you using things like books or setting things up to get it at that correct level, but it is important. The other thing is that you really want to check your background, that it's not super duper busy. Mine's a little busy, but this is my office and books are fine as a background. You can also use virtual backgrounds if you want, which are fine, but don't have them moving. Anything that is moving, like one of my colleagues has one that has waves that crash. And while waves are soothing, that's great, they are not particularly helpful when it keeps moving and drawing your eyes away. So it's too much. And that constant gaze, actually, it ends up being very exhausting for people if you have a moving background. The other thing that you can do is that you can touch up your video settings. So you can check the following. You can enable your HG. So if you go down to the bottom of things like Zoom when you're on, you can go down and enable your HG and you can touch up your appearance. It's actually like a filter for your face. So I recommend using a little bit of it, but don't use a lot because then you start looking strange. And again, it's like with filters, like if you were to use on your camera on your phone, if you use too much, it starts looking weird. So, but I do recommend adjusting for low light and always displaying your name so that you have your name. And there are advanced options that you can look at as well. So what I want to hear from you all, if you're in the chat right now, I'd love to see what are your best tips that you have found to use in, or hacks that you have in the chat that you have found while you're taking classes or using Zoom. And I see that we have people like, hello, we have people, Angela from UHSP. I see we have Paola from Lindenwood, welcome. I see we have some people from Maryville. Hello, my friends from Maryville. And we have Casey, who's one of my students from Maryville. We have Christina from LU. Does anybody have any hacks or things that they do on Zoom? Angela says she wishes she had tips, but she don't. She uses a whiteboard quite a bit. Oh, that's great. Well, we'll continue on, and I'm going to be talking more about persuasive things. Here's a little cartoon why if other ones, oh, she loves it. Casey loves it when everyone has their cameras on. It is helpful because then you can see each other, but I know there are good reasons why other people can't. Oh, good lighting, Emma. Thank you, Emma Bible. Yeah, I actually wanted to mention, I have a light ring is what we call them, a lighting ring or a light ring I got on Amazon for about 20 bucks. And they can really help just to have better lighting. The other thing is to try not to have a window behind you. If there's any way to put the window in front of you, that really helps with lighting. Emma, great suggestion. That is a really important thing. And also, volume. You can buy a really cheap microphone if you want for about $20 on Amazon as well. And good sound is actually more important than good visuals. So we found that that's a thing as well. So as we go forward, I want to talk about how do you select the best headshot or profile if you're looking for a LinkedIn profile, which you all should be on LinkedIn if you're going to be job hunting anytime soon, because many employers, almost all employers, are now looking at that. And so it's really important for you to look at that. So how do you select a best headshot or profile pic? Well, there's been quite a bit of research actually done on this, which is fun and interesting to look at. What they found is the most likable or persuasive profile pics, including smiling with teeth. So it's not doing the Mona Lisa smile, which is the smile, but actually smiling, showing teeth. Now, these are just recommendations. I want to mention this because I have a student, for example, that doesn't feel comfortable smiling with teeth. If you don't feel comfortable, then you shouldn't do it. However, these were the recommendations that they found that were the most likability. So I just wanted to share their findings with you. It doesn't mean you have to do all of these. However, these are what the findings were. The other findings were that head to shoulders, which is what I'm showing you right now, or even head to waist. So just showing your top half part, were the most liked photos. Squinching, I love this word, to squinch. So it's to smile where your eyes kind of squinch up. Tyra Banks also uses this word called smizing she came up with, which I love, which is smiling with your eyes. Smizing, a real smile is really important as well. Asymmetrical composition, they say not taking it straight on, but using the rule of thirds. If you've taken a photography class, you've learned about this. Having it kind of off to the side a little bit is another way that people really stand apart in their photos. And having unobstructed eyes, so that people can see your eyes, especially not using sunglasses, was the recommendation that people whose photos included sunglasses had a lower level of trust. I find nonverbal communication so fascinating. And finally, to dress formally, to look, especially in LinkedIn, they liked professional attire, but even in dating apps, there was a big significant thing about the more formal attire, the higher the person was ranked. So losing a ratty old t-shirt, that is not a great look. So if you're going to use that for a formal picture, trying to use nicer, dressier clothing was always important. So these are some suggestions, and I really found both these articles, the Buffer article, buffer.com article, actually has kind of a summary of a number of studies. But the journal, the Sage Pub Journal article is fascinating as well if you want some additional reading. But let's go ahead and talk about interaction tactics on Zoom. So when you are taking a class or going through something like this, how do you stay engaged? It's always a challenge. A couple of the best ways to do so is one I find Casey doing in class often, who is on this in this conference today. Interaction tactics that work are active listening. So paraphrasing back, asking questions, being really involved. The other suggestion is taking notes. I see a lot of students who are not doing that, where if they were in class, they would be taking notes. And one of the major findings that we have about retention of material is that when you actually take notes, that it actually sticks better in your brain than it would before. So that is a process of actually helping you remember information better. And your interaction matters. So knowing that you are an active participant and you paying attention and interacting with each other matters as well to retention. So here are some Zoom presentation tips. Some of you may have to actually give presentations like these or give presentations in your courses. So here are some really quick nonverbal tips. Look at your camera, and this is really tempting. And I struggle with this, and I have given, I don't know how many thousands of hours of speaking on Zoom. One of the things that I struggle with a lot is making sure to look directly at the camera, look at the camera lens, and not look at yourself or at your slides or at other information that you're receiving. So it is very tempting to look elsewhere, but very important. The second thing, I think I mentioned Tyra Banks before, the smizing. Make sure you smile. It's incredibly important to smile and engage with others while you are speaking. The third is to lower your vocal pitch. This is across the board for everyone. When you are speaking, I call it my professor voice. When you're speaking, my normal speech pattern is here, is a little bit higher, it's a little softer, it's not quite as forceful, but the power is when you want to be powerful, you want to lower and speak louder. And that actually increases how others perceive your voice and your powerfulness. So you want to make sure you're doing that. So right now, wherever you are, I know I can't unfortunately have a conversation with you, but I want you to say, hello, my name is, and I want you to lower your register. I don't want you to be like, hello, my name is. I want it to be in your same vocal register, but hello, my name is, a little louder, a little bit on your lower side of your vocal registry. That's your power voice. I want you to work on your power voice. So will you all, I'm going to take a second. I want you to say, hello, my name is, in your power registry. Do you see how that feels a little different? That's what you want to do when you're presenting. You want to push that air, and it should come from your gut. If you're a singer or you played a musical instrument, you're going to know where that breathing comes from, that lower breathing. The other thing that I want you to do is use your palms. Anytime you show your palms, you're going to see speakers who are professional speakers will flash you their palms a lot. And what they're doing, and you can do it even when you're speaking in a virtual relationship. This is actually a trust building sign that you can be trusted, and it goes back to your amygdala, your what we would call your ancient brain or your ancestry brain. And it's basically a sign of trust that I'm not holding a weapon, that I'm trustworthy. And we don't actually think that. It's just one of those wiring things that registers I'm trustworthy. So you want to actually show your palms if you can when you're speaking. The other thing is, if you ever have an interview, lots of interviews are being done right now via Zoom or Skype or any of these virtual methods. If you can, we like people who are like us. And so you actually increase your likability if you can mirror someone else. So if someone is leaning forward, you want to lean forward. If they're leaning back, you can mirror their actual gestures, and it's going to increase your likability. But you don't want to get caught doing it. That's the key. So if you can slightly mirror what the other person is doing who's interviewing you, that's going to increase your likability. But don't don't mirror them too closely. Otherwise, that's awkward. So don't do that. So we're going to watch a short video right now. It's about 12 minutes. And this is from who I call the king of persuasion. His name is Dr. Cialdini. And he has 6 strategies that we're going to go into, maybe 7. Sometimes he says 6, sometimes 7. I forget in this video which one he goes over, but he is fantastic about talking about persuasive strategies. We're going to watch this video where he describes them, and then we're going to go into how you can actually apply them in your everyday life. But first, we have a question from Emma Bible, who is from Maryville. How appropriate is talking with your hands on Zoom for someone like an interview or presentation? I think it's very appropriate. So it needs to match. As long as your gestures match your speech, it actually increases your likability, is what most of the research says. The only problem that you can get into with that is if it becomes too distracting. For example, if it's a nervous tick, if you're just doing something that would distract like this, you don't want it. But if it matches what you're saying, then it's a great thing. I hope that helps clarify, Emma. If it doesn't, let me know. Okay, let's see if we can watch this video. Oh, I'm afraid we're having difficulty with sound. There should be sound at this point. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. We're trying to figure it out. So he's talking about these 6 shortcuts, Cialdini, as it's going through these rules of thumbs, or what we would call heuristics, is what he's talking about. And these are the 6 we're going to be talking about: reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. And those are the 6 that are really powerful, that can be used across any organization and in your own personal life as well. So the first one, reciprocity, I can just kind of talk through it. The first one is reciprocity is your obligation to give when you receive. Almost all places in the world, all countries have this as part of society. All our societies are built on it. Obligation to give. So when someone is kind to you or does something to help you, you feel an obligation to help them. So for example, if someone were to invite you to a party, you then feel like you should invite them to your party. And oh, he talks in this section about waiters, and that waiters who give you a gift at the end of when they're giving you the bill, like mints, at the end of the bill are about, I think it's something like 20% more likely to give a higher tip than those that don't. And so they give you a tip, but if you really want to increase your tips as a waiter, you would say something like, well, normally I give a mint, but for nice people like you, I'm going to give you 3 mints. And the tip will go up by about 34%. So it's crazy how just little differences like that make a huge difference. Actually, I'm going to see if I can put the it's a great strategy. And Cialdini does an excellent job of sharing it. Yeah. If you give 1 mint, he's going to tell the differences now. 1 minute was like 1 mint, 3% increase. 2 mints, 14%. But then if you go back and say for nice people like you, then it really increases. So we're having issues with the video feed, but we're working on it. So it was a great, so you want to personalize. The key to reciprocity is that it's personalized and unexpected. Here, I'm going to put it in the chat so you can watch it at a later time, because you really should see it. I'm not doing it justice. Here's the link. Okay. Oh, so in this part, anyway, I just put, hopefully we can put the link in the chat. I'm so sorry for our technical difficulties, but that's here is, we're having sound issues. So let's go on. Leadership is not about titles. We're gonna have the link posted. So leadership really isn't about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's really about influencing one another. And that's what you're doing with Persuasion, is that it's really, truly influence. And you have the opportunity to influence so many people in your organization. So we're gonna keep going, and I'll tell you a little bit more about these different. So what I want to hear now, so now the link is, thank you, Karen, for posting the link. I really appreciate it. So here's the link that we have. You can watch the video later on your own. It's a great video. It's about 12 minutes long. It goes through, and it'll be a great review. I can tell you a little bit about these. We'll be going over a little bit about these. So I want to hear right now what your challenge as leaders are that you're experiencing, and that you, when you're thinking about your field of influence, what you would like to have. What are you facing as challenges as leaders in your organization right now? Keeping individuals motivated by working remotely. That is a big problem. What else are you experiencing? Thank you, Erin, for sharing that. Casey says, getting new organizational members and engaging current members in a virtual world. Yeah. Emma says, burnout, working, and the results don't always come as quickly these days. Okay, great. These are all very, very relatable. Okay, new org members. How do you recruit? How do you keep people motivated? How do you prevent burnout? Great. And if we go on to the next slide, I have another question for you. What do your peers want? What do you think they really want from the organizations that you work with? And Peter, thank you. Getting students involved in virtual spaces. That's always a challenge, especially when you feel like you have to be in a virtual space so much of the time already. I want you to be thinking about, what do your peers really want? Hold that question as we move forward and talk through some of the Cialdini's ideas behind Persuasion. These are building blocks of Persuasion. Also, Erin said, guidance on how to manage students, faculty, staff, workloads, mental health. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. And Emma said they want to feel valued and appreciated, like part of the family. Yeah, very much a sense of belonging. You know, a sense of belonging is really important. And it's harder to establish virtually than it is face-to-face. Angela says, I think many times we don't know what people really want out of our organization. Yeah, great point, Angela. And Casey says, I think my peers want support and connection. Yeah. Don't we all? It's a great point. Okay, as we move forward, I want you to hold these in your mind, this idea. So let's move forward. So the first idea that Cialdini really brings into is this idea of reciprocity, which we just talked a little bit before, but the idea is that we should repay in kind what another person has provided us. All human societies prescribe to this rule, which I think is really underlying this idea that we need to actually pay it forward to others. And by doing that, by thinking about how can we help? How can we help? Right? And that's underlying what true leadership is. Where can we contribute? You know, that idea. And if we move on to the next slide, we're going to really see that in a way that, you know, how can we do that? Get in a habit of helping people out, and then don't just say it's no problem. What you really want to do here in your own personal life and in your organization is think about how your organization can help others. So if you're in a student organization, for example, how your student organization could partner with others. But then you don't want to just say it's no problem. You want to say, of course, it's what partners do for each other, or it's what people do for each other, or it's what we do for each other to help each other. That's the reciprocity script. And what Cialdini says by this is how you influence people. When you help another person, that's when you have your greatest moment of influence. So when we think about, when you're going back to thinking about keeping people motivated, or, how to really make that connection in virtual space, you want to think about how can we help others? And then we want to connect them. We want to pull them into our organizations. We want to really make sure that they feel like they have this sense of belonging. So really looking at reciprocity and how important this can be. It's a crucial foundation. The next thing is commitment and consistency is the second foundation that he has. People like to believe that how they are is consistent. Nobody likes to think they're wishy-washy or that they're one way one day and not the next. So once people establish a commitment, they're more likely to continue with your organization. We like to sustain our social bonds. For example, Cialdini talks about how a lot of times people don't want to put signs in their yards for whatever. And so they started by asking people to put a little sign in their window. And then they came back and asked them to put a bigger sign in their yard. Well, if they accepted to put the little sign in their window, they were 60% more likely to later put a big sign in their yard. Why? Because they had already committed to it. They had made the commitment. So once they make a little commitment, they're much more likely to make a big commitment. So this is called a foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, then you're much more likely to make a bigger commitment. When you buy a car, this happens a lot. So once you buy the car, then they'll try to sell you a lot of other things later down the road. So like care packages for your, not care package, but what is it called? The service package for your car, things that go with your car. So there's all these other things, 'cause it becomes easier to sell you things once you've made that initial commitment. So I want you to think about how you can apply this to your organization or even your own persuasive life. So if you get someone to attend a meeting for your organization, think about then, that's very low risk, especially if it's a virtual meeting. They just have to come to a Zoom meeting. You then want to think about how can you get them to make a commitment to your organization? So what is membership like? So get them to sign up for something, sign up for, whatever it might be, and then like something, follow something, attend something, and make then the follow-up greater. But then you need to follow up with them and ask for that greater commitment. So that following up, just getting your foot in the door, getting them to do something, and then later following up. So maybe for a new membership, for example, having them come to some kind of small event first, and then asking them if they want to become a member is a way to do that, a foot in the door. Which leads us to our next one, which is what he calls liking. And there are 5 liking strategies. These are the first 3, like how to get people to like you. I know this sounds cheesy, but we tend to like people who are like ourselves. So the first thing is, unfortunately, that is true. And so that can create problems like prejudice and other issues, but this is true about ourselves. So it's important that we know it. One thing that you can do is stress similarity. So Aristotle has this idea, Aristotle, who we call the father of communication, has this idea of identification. How can we identify with each other? So one of the ways is to look for ways that we're similar. So if you can figure out a way that you share a similarity with someone. So for example, if you're interviewing and you see that there's a Kansas City Chiefs sign behind someone and you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, bingo, you have a form of identification. You can then talk about the Chiefs, and that will actually make that person like you more. Isn't that crazy how easy it is? And again, like that mirroring that body language, that tip I gave you earlier about like in an interview, mirroring what they're doing, that also will increase likability. Another strategy is contact. The more frequent contact we have with someone, the more we like them. There is a caveat, unless you really, really dislike them. And then that typically has the ability to increase your dislike. But it's the reason we tend to like our professors or classmates more over time. It's the reason we like our family, the more contact you have with someone. So if you can increase frequent contact with someone, that's another way to increase likability. The third thing is physical appearance. Unfortunately, people like good-looking people. They think they're more kind. They think they're more honest and more persuasive. If you think about, what was that serial killer's name that he got off because he was attractive. That's terrifying and awful. But people like people that are perceived as attractive. So you do want to present your best self. So think about that whenever you're speaking to others, or, even on Ted Bundy. Thank you, Peter. I watched it on Netflix. I don't know if you all did too. I was terrified. Thanks, Peter. But you want to present your best self. You want to present your best self when you can with liking strategies. So those are the first three. Now we're going to move on to 4 and 5. The fourth thing, and I use this one all the time, are compliments. We like people who flatter us, but only if it's genuine, because you can feel when someone is blowing smoke. So whenever someone gives you a genuine, whenever you think, I try to do this, whenever I think something kind about someone else, I try to say it out loud. Simple enough, right? So I like someone's shoes, I tell them. Even if I don't know them, I just tell them. If I like the way they're doing something, if I think that's great, I try to compliment people, but just remember it needs to be genuine. So when you genuinely think something kind about someone, tell them. And people like people who give compliments. Why? Well, we all like to be flattered, right? We all like to feel good about ourselves. So if you can do that in a genuine nature, that's a way to be more likable. The last thing is cooperation. We prefer people who cooperate with us. So if you can, I'm not saying cooperate with people who you shouldn't cooperate, or with things that are not good ideas or not ethical by any means. But if you can cooperate with people or help people with good ideas, you should. And so it's good to try to cooperate. Another idea by Cialdini is authority. People tend to trust established legitimate figures and institutions. So I put t-shirts on here. Establish your organization as a thought leader. Host experts in your field on topics. These are important things to do. So if you can have authority in your area, whatever your area is, that's really important. And if we go to the next slide, you're going to see that what really is authority is if you tell people what they can lose. So in times of uncertainty, there's a great Nobel Prize winner, David Kahneman. He found out that people in times of uncertainty are more afraid of what they might lose than what they might gain. So if you put your organization like, well, you might lose if you don't do this, look at what you could lose. That actually is much more persuasive than if you put of what they might gain. So think about your organization in that way. And then there's scarcity, FOMO. Scarcity generates extra value. So we have only 4 spaces left for our next event, or we only have this, or it's an invite-only event. Scarcity, people are always fearful of what they're missing out on. And so if you can frame things in that way in scarcity, that can be a very powerful persuasive technique. And we have social validation or social proof. This is entirely what social media is built upon. People tend to do what they see other people are doing. If there are, how many of you buy things based on Amazon ratings? Or if it doesn't have a high Amazon rating, will you buy it, right? Or if it doesn't have a good review. So think about how you could use this. If lots of people are liking something, if lots of people say it's good, then it must be good, right? This is often how we feel. So have a celebrity or St. Louis celebrity or one of your university celebrities, right? Promote your organization, promote what you're doing, create TikToks, show others what you're doing, right? Contests, anything showing how much fun your group is having or how great of a time. And so I wanted you to think about, we're running out of time, I know. On chat, I wanted you to think about how you might use one of these: reciprocity, commitment, consistency, social proof, authority, liking, or scarcity in your organization. So I wanted you to think, how could you apply one of those to your organization or to your life to make it more persuasive? And then as you think of that, I'll go on. I wanted to give you some things on how in Zoom you could help with burnout. So if we move on to the next slide. Zoom fatigue is real and it's hard. And burnout's a very real thing. So a couple of recommendations that come based on evidence is try to avoid multitasking, build in breaks, do 25-minute meetings or 50 minutes so that you're not just doing meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Reduce on-screen stimuli, make virtual events opt-in, or think about other ways to do them if you can do them outside or socially distance if that's allowed. And try to think about other ways of doing things in a way or give people breaks. Use the phone. So what questions do you have for me? That's for me today. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. Thank you for allowing me to share some of these persuasive tactics with you. Oh, Erin, that's a great idea. Reciprocity, reaching out to another office to let them know how much you appreciate them coming to your event. It's a great idea. Excellent idea. And the likelihood that they'll come to your events as well, which is a great way to build community. Yes. So Cialdini actually has a book that's, he has a number of books. There's a great website. He has a book I highly recommend. If you go to the website that I entered that has his video, his books are on there as well. I highly recommend it. Him. Other readings. Is there a way for me to give a list? Thank you notes are also great. Thank you notes are really important, especially handwritten ones that are specific are also great. Other websites, readings. I follow Harvard Business Review has a great section on persuasion that I highly recommend in their communication section. That's another one that is easy to find. And Harvard Business Review's Persuasion, their blog, they have a really good blog as well that I would recommend. Probably those two. Cialdini is really the father of it. But I can send a couple. I'll send them to Peter. I just saw that he said, and he'll post them. So you can have some extra resources. But it's really a fascinating topic. There's some also nonverbal communication resources that are very, very interesting as well. So thank you so much for the privilege today. And go out and influence for good. Oh, thanks, Erin. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.